Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another hand review, and today I have a special guest. Today I'm here with Coldsmile. Hey Coldsmile, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm great. How are you?
Doing fine, thanks. And yeah, I played a live cash game hand with 5 and 10 euro blinds a few weeks ago, and I hope you can help me to review this hand.
Yeah, for sure. Looks
So
fun. Looks
let's,
fun.
yeah, always fun. As we can see, under the gun goes ahead and limbs, low jack limbs, and we have a beautiful king 10 suited on the cutoff. So we know already that we want to isolate. The question is how big, and I decided on a fairly big open. Decided to ISO raise to 7x, 70 bucks is the price. Yeah, small blind folds, and big blind goes ahead and 3 bets. Yeah, the limpas fold, and we already have a decision. Yeah, at first, how do you like my ISO raise sizing, and how do you like the spot overall? I mean, he threads on a somewhat smaller size. We are a little bit deeper, over 1500, so 150 big blinds effective, but still not a fun spot to be in. So far, villain was unknown, played just 20 hands or something like this with him. So far, he seems somewhat solid, when you can say this in live. So he just played a few hands. Mm, but besides that, no additional informations.
Hmm? The live game, the big exploit game where you can basically do anything and get away with it, kind of. So yeah, always I like to see those hands because always so much fun to review them and even more fun to play them actually. Although right now in the different countries and circumstances of COVID-19 is not really possible anymore.
Yeah,
Um, So yeah, looking forward to do this again. Yeah, again, back to the hand. Pre-flop, I think, is fine. I think default, you can make an argument for going a little bit smaller because basically your hand likes to get called by the limb calling ranges, the 10-6 suited, the king 5 suited stuff. But basically, I think this could be already an exploit by you that you basically tested, okay, how far can I go up the ladder with my raise size and they still won't fold. So basically, you set the
correct.
price to 70 and are pretty confident that they still call those hands. So the bigger, the better, obviously. So I really like that. I really like to see that. And then again, yeah, for the big blind, the huge problem is now he faces a 7x basically and has only 10 invested. So his price is pretty bad for calling, obviously. And then he chooses a very, very small 3-bet sizing. And I mean, your range when you open preflop from that position would be pretty wide, right? But now open isolating two limpers and not isolating to 4x or 5x maybe, but you took 7x, which may look even a little bit stronger to the big blind. That means that his 3-betting range will be a lot stronger as well. So basically we face a very strong range, I would say, pretty often. I would not rule out a good bluffing range as well because it's kind of a good spot because he knows you isolate the limpers wide because they call so much trash, etc., etc. So he could go for a good bluff with something like ace queen off, ace 5 suited, something like pocket nines, for example, a hand that he doesn't really want to play multiplayer but want to play heads up and maybe punish you a little bit for isolating so wide with such a big sizing. I wouldn't rule that out completely, but the sizing is a little bit small. Basically, it doesn't allow us to fold any kind of hands because the price is so good. We not only have to call 120 more, right? Yeah. So
Correct.
basically, anything suited will basically work fine because we're in position as well, and will therefore realize our equity way better in comparison to being out of position. So yeah, interesting spot. I would think for a minute, not a minute, like a few seconds, basically before calling. I think no reason to 4-bet this hand. Plays pretty well in position suited. Um, and yeah, and go from there. But yeah, I think it could be as an exploit or as like experience shows that life race may be a little bit overly tight in those spots. So therefore, we could be facing a value on range. But yeah, I don't want to rule out that he has bluffs now,
Yeah,
for
who
now.
knows? Who knows, right? So, as I explained earlier, he was an unknown, but I would say the vast majority of live players, even in 5-10 games, have not too wide bluffing ranges in those situations. Like you mentioned, especially against a 7x isolation race, they probably play fairly snug. And I also have a limping range here, so my isolating range is a little bit tighter. But yes, still I have a lot of middling type hands that can, yeah, probably not continue against his rear. I mean, I also isolate with weaker offsuit hands like ace 10 and king jack off and stuff. So yeah, would definitely be a nice spot to go ahead and thread a little bit looser. But like you mentioned, not a fun spot, but given the price, I have no chance, I have to call. But I think when he makes it a little bit bigger, when he goes with something like 240, 250, I think against an unknown, I would probably lean a little bit more towards folding. What do you think?
Yeah, the price is really, really good for us. Basically, as I said, it allows us to basically continue anything in our range that kind of plays a little bit well post flop if it's not like a hand like ace nine offsuit or something. But basically, we don't really isolate that for 7x too often. So yeah, if the price gets like towards 250 and higher, maybe. I mean, we're 1.5k deep, so basically we have a little bit more room to maneuver. And then the deeper you get, basically the better of a hand you need to make post flop to get stacks in, right? Because for 100 big blinds, it's pretty easy. You can in a 3-bet pot. If you have top pair, top kicker, stacks go in. There's no way around that. But if you're 200 big blinds deep, things are a little bit different. You basically need a little bit more of a stronger hand to go broke, right? A little bit of a stronger setup or cooler situation. So I think in this situation, it's very important to not overly overvalue your small flushes that you will make maybe with like something like 5, 6, 7, 8 suited, because if stacks go in, you are likely to be behind against a bigger flush if we talk about the value part of our opponent. So I think the bigger suited cards will work way better, as well as the bigger pocket pairs, something like tens, jacks, etc., to cool our opponent, to make him flop the worst set maybe, and we will call less as of maybe pocket sixes, pocket fives, because if we make a set and stacks go in on a random flop, we are likely having the worst set, so that's not a thing we want to do. If he makes it bigger, for king 10 suited especially, I don't think I would fold to 240 or 250 or even 270 or something like that, because it's still like 3.5x, 4x maybe. We still have a suited hand that plays pretty well post flop, and for me the important part would be that I'm in position against someone I don't know, and if we like giving ourselves an edge on the competition and say, okay, I'm maybe at least as good as him or maybe a little better, it's pretty easy, quote unquote, to realize 100% of our equity post flop. That means that we are likely seeing all 5 cards pretty frequently because of our positional advantage. And if we were out of position, I would fold those speculative hands a little bit more, because it's harder to realize, harder to maneuver post flop. So yeah, I would still call, I think.
Yeah, 100%. When we're out of position, we should definitely fold a little bit more. I think another problem here is that the SPR will be super low when we call pre-flop, right? It's different from online, because we isolate to 7x, and when he goes with 250, we have a SPR of 2 left. So yeah, we just lose our stack super often. And when he has a value only range, not a super good situation to be in. And when you think about most live opponents, and when you think their range is a little bit more, super tight, like 3, 4, 5% in general at best, then I don't mind folding till you know your opponent a little bit better, that you at least know, okay, he has some suited broadways or whatever that he is reverting here.
Yeah, good point for sure.
Right, so obviously we made the call, and yeah, we flop an okay board, and we expect that our opponent is c-betting, but he checks. That's interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I would expect a range bet as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Like 100% of the time. So when that happens, like on these fist bump range bet board, even someone who's not like super experienced with poker or not really experienced with like some GTO strategy knows that this texture is kind of good for him, because he has all the big cards or the aces, the kings that we can't have, or the ace kings, and then they start just betting and being aggressive overall. So if I place a check on this board, I'm always like kind of a bit suspicious already, and proceed very carefully, because because it makes so much sense if he has like complete air or completely missed, that he just takes a small step and make us hate our lives, and we just fold our pocket tens now, and then he takes down the pot and this happy runs into the sunset. But yeah, not really happening right here. So what do we think about that?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking exactly the same, that when he has nothing like 10-9 or Jack 10, Queen 10, Queen Jack, he's always betting flop. No way he's ever check calling or check raising with those hands. I mean, maybe with 10 Jack, Queen Jack clubs, but like I mentioned before, don't expect him to have those hands quite often. And even then, we're talking about 2, 3 combinations.
Yeah. Again, if you would look into a solver solution for that spot, I mean, two limbs, 7x, 3-bet, not really worth putting into a solver. But if we pretend this is a normal 3-bet pot with kind of normal ranges, it would make sense for him to have a checking range on this texture because you want to have a polarized betting structure. So you can make a case for that this board is not really a board you want to bet small so often with your entire range. Because if you think about the hands, you have like the 10-9 suited, the pocket 10s, the pocket 9s. What do they really accomplish by just betting small? Do they fold out any kind of equity? Do we call worse? Do we fold better? All like very unlikely. Yeah, so you could make a case for that board, especially with the flush draw. I'm just gonna bet big with a small part of my range. One is the ace kings and the pocket kings, maybe the ace queens I have, and then I take my strongest draws, basically my queen jacks, my jack tens, my club flush draws, and put them all into a big sizing, and also have checks. So again, I would not rule out we play against the GTO wizard, who just knows what he's doing.
Who knows?
Who knows? A little bit more unlikely live for sure, but still, like checking this board is a bit suspicious, but not like out of the world. Like those strategies with checking and betting big, they exist in theory as well.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. So I think with our hand we have no option. We have to check because when we bet, no worse hand will call, and we just isolate ourselves against a stronger range with king 10. And yeah, we definitely like this turn. We like this turn a ton, right? We make two pairs, so now we beat all his weaker aces. Maybe he has like ace 4 suited, ace 5 suited, just from time to time, who knows, and he just pot controlled flop. Maybe he has ace queen, ace jack, and he don't want to play 4 stacks. Also possible, I think, in a live environment, that he checks more middling type hands on the flop and just bets pure trash and super strong hands. So now
sounds good to me.
So now he goes ahead and bets 270, so basically, yeah, a little bit more than 2/3 pot size, 230 into 405. So on the turn again, I think we have not an option. We have to call, because folding is out of the question with two pair, because like I mentioned, we still beat ace jack, ace queen, ace 4, ace 5 when those hands exist. And yeah, when we raise, we just
maybe the occasional bluff.
Yeah, maybe an occasional bluff that check flop, but not so likely, I would say. If yes, then I would say probably super small frequency. And when we raise, yeah, we just isolate ourselves against aces and kings that he slow played flop with. I think you see this fairly often in live, that people check with top or middle set on those board textures. So
yeah, could be for sure.
Still be a little bit afraid. And of course we want to see a check, so villain has us covered by a ton. We have a grand left, pot is already nearly a grand, and we hope that he checks. We can value bet against ace jack, ace queen, ace 5, ace 4, and of course he rips it. Super tough spot for me. I tanked a long time, cause yeah, it's still a tough spot. We still have two pair, and like you mentioned before, you have to factor in a random factor. I mean, we know, okay, his value range is aces, kings, maybe ace king, maybe even ace 10.
Yeah,
those hands have us crushed. I think queen jack's basically impossible. Pocket 3 is also not that likely. Ace 3, yeah, maybe, but again, probably more ace 4, ace 5. And yeah, we have to find bluffs. And I think this is where we are struggling with on this board texture, because we have to find hands that check flop. And like we mentioned before, we said on the flop that it's super likely that he bets most air hands. So when he bets like 10-9 on the flop, right, jack 10, queen 10. So which bluffs could he have? Do you find a reason for calling river?
So yeah, again, I think we start with like theory and practice a little bit. So in theory, if he has like all the checks on the flop and wants to like have a checking range on that texture, he basically has to find two street bluffs now.
Yeah.
Like if these random hands, but most of them, or basically almost all of them that make for good bluffs, will have a pair. So something like jack 10 blocking our queen jack, blocking our two pairs,
yeah.
or something like an 8-9 suited that he 3-bets pre has now basically an interest to turn into a bluff. Maybe you would need to look at the solver how this works out exactly. But basically we have to give him credit for being able to know that he now needs to turn pairs with decent showdown value into bluffs in order to have any bluffs at all. So yeah, you mentioned that already. It's pretty tough for him to come to the river with a hand that he looks down on his two cards now and it's like, oh my god, I have absolutely nothing. I need to bluff now. Example would be maybe in a rare case, something like Jack 9 suited that for some reason didn't want to stab the flop, that now needs to bluff and has a pretty good bluffing candidate. But then first reason he has to have that pre for 190, isolating like a 70 euro. Yeah. And then it's basically a lot of guessing, but that's live, right? It's live. We are guessing basically a lot because the situations are so unique, so you can't really go too deep into the theory section of like solvers and GTO and blah blah blah.
Definitely.
So basically have to make up our own minds right now. And if we like under the circumstance, I would say that we think that he's maybe value heavy pre-flop. That could be, or is like
fairly
almost
likely.
certain that he is. Yeah, and then the suspicious flop check and now barreling twice and chipping the river for pot, and then showing up with enough bluff. It's not like he needs one or like two. Like he needs enough for all the aces, kings, ace kings, and queen jacks that he might bet now, the ace tens, the ace eights, or for whatever reasons. So there's a lot of hands that he can just play for value now that we are beat by, and it's super hard for him to find enough bluffs to make this a call, unfortunately. But
I think
this sucks.
This is the important point, right? That he has to, that you really have to find a lot of bluffs, because his value range is so wide. He can check with so many strong hands on the flop, bet turn, shove river, and yeah, I think occasionally, like you mentioned, it's live. Maybe he has some 6-5 suited or like pocket sevens, and he thinks, yeah, let's go. He cannot have it, but
yeah, and I think that's way more likely, right?
Yeah, but given the pre-flop situation, his value range is still so big, and in other situations where the value range is smaller, where you can just have like, I don't know, top set or something like this, we are probably more likely to bluff catch on the river, because there's always a random factor. But here his value range is so big on the river, and I think this makes this hand to a fold.
Yeah, and we have like a little bit better hands as well, because if we are making the point for checking back the flop a lot because we want to realize equity, because we don't really see players check fold a lot on ace king 8 when they 3-bet pre, which I think is true. Then considering our own range, we have all the queen jacks, we have all the pocket tens, and we have all the ace tens that we could put in our calling range. So this is not even like the best hand we can have, right? So we're not folding 100% of our range, although this might be even a thing sometimes. If our opponent doesn't bluff, like bluff 0%, then basically we don't have to bluff catch anything, right?
Correct.
So yeah.
But I think this is super important that you mentioned that we should always think about, do we have better hands on the river? And super often, when this is the best hand you can ever have, and you can still find a lot of bluffs in your opponent's range, you should probably not fold the river, right? Because otherwise you fold, like you mentioned, 100% from your own range. But in this situation we have better hands, and that's why I finally decided on a fold. And my opponent immediately tabled ace king, and I was so proud of myself that I made this laydown. To be honest, I don't think ace king is checking most of the time on this board texture. You see this with aces and kings way more often. But of course this shows us that his value range is even bigger than we thought.
Yeah, that's like a big result for us. Like getting the information that he even like traps with like ace king, which is like supposed to be betting most often, and then the traps go with aces and kings because of the blocker reasons, etc. Yeah, that shows basically that we made good assumptions and good guesses based on the informations we had, basically. So that's what our job is, right? But then again, I can feel you in this spot, right?
Yeah.
To make two pair on the turn, you're like, oh, I'm gonna stack ace queen now. I get at least 1,000 euros more out of him. Happy life. And then you face the river shop, and you're like, bro, I think this is a fold now. I just have to fold. Like, and you sit there for like multiple hours to get into a deep situation, like a big pot with a good two pair, and you still have to muck it. So there's a lot of discipline around that as well, especially when you're playing live against weaker opponents, to just make up your mind and find the reasoning in game as well. So yeah, talking about the hand afterwards and maybe doing some research even is easy, but laying this down live as an unknown against an unknown, this is tough. So yeah, credits for that.
Yeah, thanks. And it was hard. Like you mentioned, it's not like playing online. You really sit there for 3 hours and then the spot comes up. And I think that's also the reason why most live players cannot fold really strong holdings, like a full house or trips or two pair, because you play for hours and then you have those strong holdings and you think, oh well, my opponent is probably bluffing something, I don't know, and they just toss in the call, and that's just wrong. You should still break down the ranges, and when you cannot find enough bluffs, just lay it on your hand, because this will increase or decrease your hourly tremendously. So yeah, playing correct in those spots, in those big pots, is super, super, super crucial. So yeah, thanks for your time, thanks for your opinion. I hope you liked our hand review, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye, guys.